These are the instructions for the Write Your Own Case Study assignment. This assignment consists of 3 parts. Part 1 is a story that includes a moral dilemma, of course, just like in the case studies that we've read in class so far. And I would want this to be at least 2 paragraphs. So it could certainly be longer than this, but minimum of 2 paragraphs. The second part of the assignment should be a list of possible ways that a person could respond to the dilemma that you set up in your story. Usually this will be at least 3 ways. And then the third part is a justification for each of the possible ways of responding, including the moral principles and theories that most directly apply to each justification. Now I'm going to go through each of these and talk a little bit more. For the story, I would like you to use a story that makes a good case study. So think of a moral dilemma or a moral conflict that you've experienced in your life or that you've seen. It doesn't have to come from your own life. It can be completely made up. Just some sort of moral conflict. The point is to write a story that draws out this conflict and presents it in a clear way. You can be as creative as you would like. And also feel free to use one of your classmates' examples. You can go back to the discussion board where everybody presented their examples. And if you see one of those that you think's really good and just needs a little bit more development, feel free to use it. They won't know. And so if you didn't like any of your ideas, feel free to use one of your classmates. That's why we did that as a discussion board. And as I said, this should be at least 2 paragraphs, although it can be as long as you would like. Basically, you need to write enough to draw out whatever the moral dilemma is that you're going to then be investigating. Often, writing a little bit more than you think you need can be helpful as you move through the rest of the assignment. The next part is the possible ways to respond. So for this part of the assignment, I would like you to list the different ways to respond to this moral problem that you presented in your story. You should normally be able to come up with at least 3 ways, right? Just like in our papers, one extreme on each side of the moral problem, and then some possible response that sort of navigates the middle ground between the 2 extremes. Now, certainly depending on what your moral dilemma is, there may be more than 3. That is certainly okay. You're not limited to 3 responses. You can include more if that's necessary. But I would like you to investigate all of the reasonable responses. Now, I recognize that you can effectively have infinite responses or seemingly very many responses. I don't need to go through every single nuance of every different response. But I would encourage you to think through all of the obvious responses to your the dilemma that you present in your story. And as I said, there should be at least 3. The third part of this assignment is a justification for each response. So for this part of the assignment, start by presenting each of your possible responses, right? You've just presented these in the previous part, and then justify this response. Include any moral principles or theories that help explain this justification. So refer back to the stuff that we've been talking about in class, always good. And you don't have to use the same principles or theories to explain and justify each response. So this is part of what this assignment is supposed to draw out, is that we might discover that on different extremes, a different sort of theory or set of justifications may be more helpful. Your principles and theories can change with each response. That is perfectly okay. All right. Now I'm going to kind of go through the paper layout so you have some idea of what I'm expecting. So probably should start by giving your case study some kind of title, then include your story. Next, use a header titled Possible Ways to Respond, followed by each of your possible ways to respond to your story, so at least 3. And then finally, include a header titled Justification for each response, followed by each response and your justification for it. So if you want a little bit more of a visual, this is kind of what I have in mind. The title up there at the top, followed by your story with at least 2 paragraphs, then another header, possible ways to respond, response 1, response 2, response 3, if there's more, response 4, and so on. And then another header, justification for each response, followed by your justification for response 1, justification for response 2, and justification for response 3, and so on. Certainly, if you have any questions or concerns about this assignment, let me know. Otherwise, I hope that you have fun with this. That's my intention. And they give us an opportunity to sort of clearly think through a moral dilemma from the ground up. Yeah, if you have any questions, let me know.